Story 1. A couple of years ago, I was talked into adopting an elderly, arthritic Amazon parrot with chronic sinusitis. He was very much like having a special needs toddler. He had been cage-bound for a long time and was not well socialized. He only ever said 3 or 4 words, hello, wow or woo, oh, and bird, but he mimicked a variety of other bird sounds. He picked me as his personal slave but also got along well with my husband, although they rarely interacted closely. Last summer, my husband went on a short trip and the parrot barely seemed to notice. After he returned, we settled in for food and to talk about the trip. The bird was perched inconspicuously next to us. During a lull in the conversation, he made a low, throat-clearing sound and then said with perfect clarity, "Where did you go?" We both almost fell out of our chairs. I am so glad I had a witness, or I would have spent the rest of my life second-guessing what I had heard. The bird has never said that or any other full sentence since then. Story 2. I taught our Labrador to shut the back door when she came in from the yard. We would leave the door just barely unlatched so the air conditioning would not escape and she could nose it open and come in whenever she wanted. Once she was in, she would push the door fully shut and find a human who would have heard the door bang so she could get a treat. We kept treats in candy jars in the places people spent time. She then began closing the pantry or bathroom door and going to claim a treat from someone in another room. I also taught her to find my keys. She would fetch or point to anything I asked for if she knew the word for it or could figure out what we were pointing to, which is why we kept treat stashes in case we wanted her to hand us the remote or something else. For about a week, it was great. If I did not know where I had put my keys, I would ask her to get them. If they had fallen down in the couch, she would sniff them out. Then she realized there were always keys on the pegboard where I was supposed to put my keys, so instead of finding my keys, she would just go get any keys. Story 3. I had 2 dogs who were about 6 years apart in age. The older one would take toys from the younger, then go off to play with them. The younger dog eventually learned that if he wanted a toy, he should first grab one he did not want. The older would take it and then he could grab his favorite. Both got what they wanted. Story 4. My cat gets zoom eyes at night and likes to pounce around on the bed, even when I am under the covers. One week, I was in bed recovering from hip surgery. My cat was doing her usual thing, but as she zoomed past, one of her paws grazed my hip. She stopped, turned back, and started kneading where my surgical incision was. After 5 minutes, she went about her day. The next day, she hopped on the bed, sat on top of me, and began kneading my hip again, exactly where the doctor had made the incision. I cannot tell if it was sympathy or if she was sending healing vibes, but now I know she is willing to help if she thinks something is wrong. Cats definitely do not get enough credit. Story 5. I made a sandwich and set it down on the coffee table. My dog was watching me, then started barking and ran to the front door. I assumed someone must be there, so I went down the hallway while my dog ran back to the living room. I opened the door and no one was there. I went back to the living room and found my lunch gone and my dog pretending to be asleep in his bed. He was squinting and closed his eyes whenever I looked at him. I had been tricked and robbed by a dog who had the nerve to pretend to be asleep. Genius. A thieving asshole, but a genius one at that. Story 6. My dog loves car rides and driving around our suburb with his head out the window. He realized that if he bolted out the door, I would always come to fetch him. The little rascal worked out how many blocks he had to run to guarantee a car ride. So now he waits 4 blocks down the street and sits with a smug look on his face. Story 7. I heard a loud noise at the back of my house and went to check, thinking a raccoon had gotten into the laundry room again. My cat started hurting me the other way, and it turned out my son had fallen out of bed, hurt himself, and was crying almost silently. The cat got lots of treats that night. Story 8. My husband and I had a dog. She was our first baby. She was supposed to be mine, but my husband became her person. She was a border collie and husky mix. She was beautiful, intelligent, well-trained, and wonderful with our children. She impressed me most with her malicious compliance. She had started eating what the children, who were still very young then, left on the table. I was angry and told her to stop eating off the table, so she picked up the bowl with leftover mac and cheese, put it on the floor, and then ate the food. I could not be mad. She did exactly what she was told. She has been gone for 10 years now. We still miss her. She was the best dog and a great nanny for the children. Story 9. My husky mix watches the road intently whenever we drive out of town. If I take a different road home and pass the usual turnoff, his head whips around from the window and he looks at me as if to say, "You missed the turn back there." Cracks me up every time. I believe if I drove him 10 miles out of town and left him, he could follow the roads back to our house from memory. He has a road map in his head. Story 10. I have always thought our chicken black hole was a cute little thing, but I never thought she could use her brain. The other day, though, I was talking to someone and mentioned her name. She stared at me in horror. I did not know she knew her name. Story 11. We have an elevator in our home because it is difficult for my grandparents to use the stairs. I recently discovered that my dog learned to use it after watching us a few times. He has figured out which buttons go to each floor. Story 12. I have dogs. Whenever a stranger comes by, they make a strange howling sound so everyone knows there is a person at the garden gate. One of them discovered she can use that sound to alarm the others and steal their toys, even when no one is around. The other dogs fall for it every time. Story 13. My mom died of cancer about 15 years ago. Our cat Mama, a big 21-pound tabby, would sit on laps in the living room and only went to the kitchen to eat or to the bathroom. She never went upstairs, mostly because she was a portly little soul and because she was 12. She was antisocial with most people and trotted away from everyone except my mom and me, often hissing and swatting at visitors. My mom moved into my grandmother's house for hospice as things reached the end. Mama paced the house meowing whenever I saw her. I had moved in to help take care of my mom, but I would go home to get clothes and other things and to feed Mama and clean the litter box. She shuffled around at a much faster pace than normal, like she was worried. When my mom finally let go, we did not go home that week. My godmother took care of the cat chores while I was saying goodbye. After the funeral, I went home that night, exhausted from grief. I could not sleep. My tear ducts and throat felt worn out and empty. There was a wrenching ache in my gut that no medicine could touch. About 1 a.m., I heard Mama meowing at my mother's bedroom door, then saw her little bowling ball silhouette at the entrance to my room. She had loafed her way up the stairs for probably the first time in 7 years, and she was at least half her usual weight. She locked eyes with me, stopped meowing, struggled onto my bed, and curled around my arm on my pillow after giving me a little nose boop. My mom had not been home in about a month, and I had not been home in over a week, and it felt like Mama knew my mom was gone. There is a cruel isolation to grieving the loss of a parent. Even if you see many people, there is a distance between you and friends and family, and you feel like you are on an island thanking people on passing ships for being there. When Mama came up the stairs to comfort me, it was the first time I did not feel alone all day, even though I was surrounded by hundreds of people. I poured my dry sorrow into her fur, making the tearless, echoing sounds you make when you scream at a concert. Normally, she would have bolted at the slightest thing, but she stayed until the first light of morning. I decided to take Mama home to my apartment after that. She lived another 11 years. I said goodbye to her a few years ago. She never climbed another set of stairs in her wonderful kitty life. She remained mean to most people but affectionate with me, and she never sat in anyone else's lap. She was truly my cat. Rest in peace, Mama. You were the best furry friend in history. Story 14. I was in my baby's bedroom with the baby and the dog. I realized it had been a while since I had let the dog out, so I left the baby playing for a moment and nipped downstairs with the dog, who usually follows me. When I reached the back door, the dog was not following. She had stopped at the top of the stairs and would not budge. She sat there glaring at me as if to say, "You forgot the baby." Story 15. Our dog has learned my husband's forgetfulness. He tends to say, "Want to go out?" And then, when he gets up to grab the harness, he gets sidetracked by something else. The dog apparently grew tired of this habit and won't move from her spot until she hears him grab the harness. Then she trots over. Story 16. My little Havanese came out of the veterinarian's office after a teeth cleaning. The veterinarian had said no water for a while. He was groggy, And when we asked if he wanted to walk or to go home, he turned down the hill toward Riverside Park. He was intent, almost pulling us down the hill, across the pedestrian bridge over the train tracks, then left toward the basketball courts and the restroom. He pulled us to a water fountain with a dog bowl attachment, sat down, looked at us, and looked back at it. We ignored the veterinarian's orders and gave him a little water. He had only been to that water fountain once years earlier and never after a visit to the veterinarian. He has incredible spatial memory. He knows the highway exits near his favorite places and remembers which apartment buildings his favorite friends live in. He is very vocal and communicates his needs and wants with squeaks, barks, growls, chirps, and other sounds. He is 12 years old now and still going strong. He will do 5-mile hikes with us. Story 17. At a barn where I worked, a mule figured out how to open gates and latches and would break into the feed storage at night. He didn't like getting in trouble for it, so he started letting other horses out. That troublemaker would then eat his fill and relock himself in his own paddock by morning, leaving the other horses to take the fall. He also stole and chugged long-neck beers left unattended. Pour one out for Moose. Story 18. When the cat does something wrong and I raise my voice to get her to stop, she runs to the window and pretends to see a bird outside. Story 19. I had a solid plastic pet cage with a sliding horizontal metal grid on top. Over the years, it had held various animals, including mice and guinea pigs, with no problems. When one of my new rats turned out to have been sold to me while pregnant, it became a nursery cage. When the babies were about 5 weeks old, I separated them by sex and put the mother and the female babies in the main cage with the other females, while the 6 male babies stayed in the nursery cage until they went to their new homes. These tiny fluffy baby rats, whose eyes had been open for only about 3 weeks, worked out that if they all hung from the grid by their front paws and swung in synchrony, their combined weight could nudge the sliding grid far enough for them to stick a nose through at one end and escape as a group. The best thing was they were smart enough to escape and also to know where their food and water came from. Rather than finding an empty cage and searching for half a dozen tiny escaped rats, I discovered several baby rats calmly sitting on top of the cage, greeting me and asking for treats. They could easily get down whenever they wanted, either back into the cage or into the rest of the room. Later, they demonstrated exactly how the escape had been achieved. Otherwise, I do not think I would ever have worked it out myself. I am less intelligent than half a dozen baby rodents. Another time, some of my rats staged a breakout, booted up my desktop personal computer, accessed the basic input-output system, and tampered with a number of settings. I still do not know if I ever restored everything to how it should have been. Story 20. My partner built a robust dog fence around the yard, so our lab mix could let himself out through the dog door to sun himself while we were at work. One afternoon, we caught him nonchalantly sneaking through a hole in the fence. Buddy, what are you doing?" He froze with the most horrified expression on his goofy face and slowly turned to see if we were aware that he was sneaking out. Busted. It turned out he had been letting himself out for walks around the neighborhood for months, always making sure to get home before we did. He knew he wasn't supposed to, so he kept it secret. The only reason he got caught was that he was so comfortable with it he forgot it was our day off. The neighbors later confirmed he was extremely well behaved and assumed we were just allowing it. Truly, he was the best boy. Story 21. My cat coughs and hyperventilates when she feels she is not getting enough attention. Her cough sounds so much like a human cough that it is freaky. When she had a cold with coughing and hyperventilating, she received extra special treatment from everyone, including extra snacks for being a good girl at the veterinarian and when taking her medication. We spent over $1,000 on veterinarian visits, which included X-rays and other tests. We were considering a second opinion, but all the results came back clear and the veterinarian said she is just attention-seeking and likes extra snacks and pets. We have also had a cat who played fetch and another who learned to open doors and turn on faucets. Story 22. Once, when my dog was a puppy, he threw up a rock and then barked at it. Story 23. I watched a cat slide under a windowsill and stretch to push the window open a little more using its back. The same cat had a special meow to call the other cat, as if it were a name. My friend had a baby. When the baby began to fuss, the dog, a collie, went to the diaper bag, grabbed a bottle, and dropped it at my friend's feet. She had not been trained to do that. Story 24. The other day my German Shepherd reminded me to give him his monthly flea and tick chewable treatment when I was a few days late for the first time ever. It is a pill he gets only once a month. He got up, led me to the shelf where I keep it, and nudged his head toward the box. Then he sat there smiling and drooling, patiently waiting for me to figure it out. I knew dogs had an internal clock, but I did not know it was that precise. Another example was a couple of years ago, when we had only recently adopted him and he got giardia. I had been taking him out to the yard regularly to go to the bathroom so he would not have an accident. He had already had one on the carpet and I had to replace it. One time he just wanted to go out and play, but I was not in the mood. So he went to the same rug I had just replaced and started squatting as if he was going to go to the bathroom. I said no, and then I ran with him to the backyard. He then proceeded not to go to the bathroom and just run and play outside for 30 minutes. Story 25. I had a budgie, a parakeet that loved the Phantom of the Opera. I owned the full recording, which is quite long. Whenever I put it on, I had to play the entire recording in order with no skipping. If I tried to stop before the end, he would flap his wings violently and scream. Skipping songs, starting in the middle or playing only one track made no difference. He would become distraught unless he heard the whole thing from beginning to end. If any of the music played during a television show or a commercial, he would demand I put on the full recording and gave me no peace until I did. He also loved E-Power Bigs, specifically the organ performances of Bach fugues. His other favorite was the Fifth Suite for solo cello. He loved to sing, but he did not mimic. He sang along in his own way. It was wild. Story 26. When my children were little, they went to a friend's house a few blocks away. Our dog wanted to go too and looked forlornly out the window as they left. A few minutes later, he wanted to go outside to use the bathroom. When he did not come back to the door, we went to investigate and found a suspicious new hole under the fence. After a brief search, we found the dog patiently sitting in their friend's driveway. He had followed their scent all the way to a house he had never been near before. Story 27. Our cats are incredibly emotionally intelligent and aware. They seem to know when someone is in distress and are very gentle about it. I swear 2 of them understand English. If you try to pick up our Balinese cat suddenly, she will dig her claws into whatever she is standing on. You have to ask her whether she wants to be picked up or given a ride before she will let you lift her. She loves being held. She just needs communication. Our elderly cat, who loves loafing on people, has learned she cannot lie on my abdomen because I have a large cyst and the area is sensitive. She makes sure to loaf on my hip instead. Story 28. I have 6 ducks and 3 chickens. One windy day, the chicken coop door blew closed, leaving one of the hens inside. Our lead female duck started sounding an alarm. I went outside to see if there was a hawk or if the neighbor's dog was bothering them, but she was just letting me know. Story 29. Our cat alerts us to high blood pressure. She tries to get my daughter to sit down or slow down, and every time I notice it, I ask if she feels dizzy. I cannot raise my voice in another room or get stressed around the cat, because she will start acting panicked and try to calm me. My daughter has dysautonomia, and the cat noticed something was wrong even before the diagnosis. Story 30. My Petunia passed away last week. I have shared this story many times since. She was an 11-year-old English bulldog, stubborn and full of attitude. Like many bulldogs, she developed horrendous gas toward the end. One morning, it was obvious my husband had forgotten to give her pumpkin the night before. The house smelled sulfurous. I said, "Good morning, Stinky." She got up, which was unusual because her favorite hobby was snoring, paced the living room, stopped to look me in the face, and crop dusted me. Then she went back to her bed to finish her nap. I never called her Stinky again, and she never crop dusted me again. Story 31. I watched my angry cat chase his brother down the stairs. The downstairs layout is an open square around a central bathroom. The chased cat went one way. The chasing cat stopped, hesitated, then went the other way to cut him off. He knew the layout and used that knowledge to make a quick, sound decision. So don't tell me animals lack the capacity to think critically and solve problems. Story 32. We taught our hound dog to use buttons for treats or to go outside. She now understands there are other buttons and can roll the car windows down. She also knows how to recline the couch just so. She is the smartest, most infuriating, and most interesting dog we have ever had. Story 33. My dog has a knack for finding the weakest link when we have people over for dinner. He will plant himself right next to someone and just stare. He knows that when my dad visits, my dad will give him something. Even with new people, he can figure out who is most likely to drop something. Story 34. Our old tiger was 18, deaf, and nearly blind. We would bring him outside to sit with us in the yard, along with our two much younger cats. One of the cats always hunted along the pond shoreline and brought him the treats she caught, dropping them to him as he sat on the lawn. I was moved to tears when I first saw that. It showed her decision-making and compassion, and it blew my mind. Story 35. My childhood cat was Softy. We did the usual training. The squirt bottle when she did something naughty, and she was generally well behaved. Then we had a hot spell one summer with multiple days in the low to mid 40 degrees Celsius, about 110 degrees Fahrenheit, so we were all sweltering. She started deliberately being naughty so that we would spray her with the squirt bottle and cool her off. Story 36. We have 2 spaniels. Last year my parents gave them chew toys with a flavored coating on one side. Our pup Annie loves them and tries to hoard them. If our other pup, Lucky, has one, Annie will try to take it. If he will not give it up, she will grab one of his tennis balls, his favorite thing in the world, and strut around the room with it until he chases her. Then she drops the ball and grabs the chew toy. She has no interest in tennis balls at any other time. Story 37. My childhood cat lived outdoors. One day she was sunning herself on the porch while my dad was doing chores. My dad said, "Why don't you make yourself useful and go catch a mouse or something?" as he passed by. A few minutes later, he circled the house and found her in the yard with a mouse pinned under her paws. Story 38. I watched my false water cobra hide the rat I had just offered in her cool hide, then turn back toward me and wait until she realized she was not getting seconds. During her last shed, she had her tail in her mouth. I gently pulled off the end of her shed skin. Compared with my other snakes, hognose snakes, and a ball python, you can almost see the cogs turning. She will also jiggle the lock on her vivarium with her nose to make noise and get our attention, either because she wants to be let out or because she wants us to clean up a large poop she has just produced. The first few months with her were a steep learning curve. Most days I found her doing something I never expected a snake to be capable of doing. Story 39. Not my dog. I found a lost dog standing in the middle of a forest road. It was dangerous, but he seemed well cared for. I opened the car door and asked, "Hey boy, what are you doing here?" He perked up, came, and jumped into the car. He was very friendly, and I wondered what to do. I started driving in the direction he had been looking, hoping to find his owner. I worried he had been dumped, but it was worth a try. At a crossroads, the dog became excited, staring at the road to our right. We turned onto that road. At each fork I asked, "Where's home, boy?" He would pick a direction and stare. We would drive that way. Eventually we reached a clearing with a small farmhouse. I asked the man there if he was missing a small ginger dog. He was. I opened the car door, and the dog jumped out and ran straight to the house. Story 40. My cat hangs out with me in my room most of the day when I am home, but she keeps me awake at night, so I shut her out. She has learned that I will kick her out when I am going to bed. So as soon as she sees me brushing my teeth and arranging my blankets, she hides under the rocking chair so I cannot reach her. The only way she will come out is if I shake her treat container and call treats. She will only come out when I actually put treats on the floor. She will not come out for the container being shaken alone. Even if I have just fed her, if she sees me getting ready for bed, she will hide under the chair until I bribe her out with treats. Story 41. I think everyone who has pets and loves them typically sees how intelligent they can be. But it is wild how emotionally in tune they can be. When we got our 2 kittens, we already had a former working support dog. He was sweet and very smart. We used to let him outside without a leash. He was fully grown and had earned his freedom. He rarely left the property, and if another dog approached, he would handle it calmly and kindly, never barking or growling. He was more of a housemate than a pet. He essentially trained my kittens, and I see his essence in them every day. When our pup passed away, our boy cat could not handle it. He would cry all day and urinate on himself, leaving messes wherever he stood. We had to give him medication for a few weeks until his grieving eased. It was heartbreaking to watch him lose his best friend. A few months later, I took a job 2.5 hours away and was going to live there for a few years. I remember sobbing next to my girlfriend, and my boy cat desperately tried to console me. He had always been affectionate, and it was obvious he knew I was in distress. A year ago, when I bought my house, my brother, nephew, and the nephew's dog moved in. It was amazing to see a dog that had never interacted with cats try to chase my cat, only for my cat to stand his ground and then rub his head against the dog. They became best friends quickly, sleeping and playing together. I worried when the dog moved out that our boy would be distressed, but he wasn't. I think he understood the dog had not died. He had just moved away. I'm telling the story now because the dog is back at my house while my brother is on vacation, and the two were so happy to be reunited. This was all a while ago. The cats have experienced a lot of loss, and I can tell it has aged them. They are attached to me all day. We let them outside like I used to let the dog. They are grown adults who have been through a lot. Also, my boy cat can open doors. Story 42. Someone threw a firecracker into the fire. My dog disappeared. The party broke up to search for her. I ran 1.5 kilometers home. As I was unlocking the door to my parents' house, my dad opened it and said, "What is going on?" When I explained Remy was missing, he said, "She is inside. She is home." Turned out she ran straight home. I did not even realize she knew the way. She jumped up, rang the doorbell, and my dad let her in. Australian Shepherds are incredibly smart. Story 43. I have a border collie mini poodle mix. She usually gets the zoom eyes in the evening. One night she was zooming around and ran into the bathroom. I didn't think anything of it. She came running out barking, as if she wanted me to follow her. She led me to the bathroom and pointed her nose at the bathtub. What was in the tub? Dog poop. My dog had pooped in the bathtub, and she was sitting there wagging her tail, looking so proud of herself. Apparently the zoom eyes were her way of telling me she needed to go out to poop. But she had just come in, so I thought she had done her business outside already. I wasn't even mad. She knows the bathroom is where her people do their business, and because she couldn't get onto the toilet, she chose the next best thing, the bathtub. I fully believe that if she had been big enough to get on the toilet, she would have pooped there. Story 44. The cat and I were watching television. I heard a loud clunk upstairs. I looked for the cat and found her staring at me. In that moment, I realized she blamed me for the mysterious noises in the house, the way I blamed her. We both had the same surprised look on our faces and immediately investigated. When she got older, she would sit on my lap while I watched television. After about 45 minutes, she would bite me, so I would discipline her by standing up and walking away. Turned out that was exactly what she wanted. She wanted to sleep in the warm spot where my seat had been, not on my lumpy legs. What a character. Story 45. Our iguana is fully potty trained. We have a tiny iguana door built into our screen door. She steps outside, does her business, then walks back in and returns to her cage. Story 46. I gave my cat treats after she used the cardboard scratcher to encourage her to keep her claws off the furniture. Eventually she would sit on the scratcher, so I told her no treats for sitting on it. She would look me in the eye, walk over to the couch and sharpen her claws on it. That is how my cat trained me to give her treats for sitting on but not using her cardboard scratcher. Story 47. Many years ago, I had a cat who really hated the litter box. She would use it only with all four paws wrapped around a corner, then leave without bothering to bury anything. She would also follow me into the bathroom every time, because 1 in 5 times I was sitting and could pet her. She was very smart. At the time I lived with roommates and there was a half bath off the kitchen that someone would not flush. We all pointed fingers, but no one confessed. One day I was in the kitchen and I heard the toilet in the half-bath trickling. I went in to jiggle the handle and found my cat with her paws wrapped around the seat and her rear over the bowl, urinating. I excused myself, let her finish, and then gave her treats. She never defecated in the toilet, only urinated, but it was still impressive. Unfortunately, her intelligence also extended to opening cupboards and getting into people's food, which she preferred to her cat food. I loved that scrappy alley cat. Story 48. When I made a joke sign listing the house rules, one of them said no shitting on the kitchen floor. My cat, the accused floor shitter, took one look at it and defecated on the hall floor for the first time in his life. Story 49. My small cat would sit on one of our cabinets and violently smack the corner of the wall as high as she could, at random times each day. My mom grew fed up and moved the cabinet, discovering water damage. The cat had heard a small roof leak and was trying to alert us. She has always been very smart, but that discovery was remarkable. Now, anytime we see her doing something out of the ordinary, we pay close attention. Story 50. My dog told me no. He is told no a lot because he is quite naughty, so I am sure he has picked it up. One day at the park, he started barking at another dog. I said, "Yoshi, come on, stop barking." He actually said no. Story 51. I have a Labrador named Aurora. She is my dog and I am her person. If my husband gives a command, she looks at him as if he is not the boss and will not obey until I tell her. I just had hip surgery. I am supposed to stay off my feet as much as possible, use a walker to get around, and cannot really take care of her. When I got home, she asked to go outside. Without thinking, I said, "Go ask Dad." She went and asked him. I was dumbfounded. A few years ago, I had a golden retriever who was always last in line for the brain cell. He actually peed in his own water dish. We called him Walter the Wonder Dog. I was having one of those days when everything that could go wrong did go wrong. I sat down and started to cry. Walter kept trying to put his ball in my mouth because, for him, the ball is life. Story 52. I had Peter, 10 months old at the time, for about 20 hours. I looked at my husband and said that he had not eaten anything that day. Peter got up and went over to eat some food. Story 53. Our first cat loved roast beef lunch meat. We never gave it to her willingly, but she sometimes got pieces my husband dropped. One day I opened the fridge to put something away and she flew in, nudged a container on the bottom shelf aside, grabbed the roast beef and ran to the bathroom. She crouched behind the toilet, out of reach, trying to open the container. Story 54. I had a half Labrador, half Akita that we bought from an Akita breeder when she was 5 weeks old. She was my first dog and I was pretty inexperienced. All I knew about Akitas was that the Japanese used them as babysitting dogs. When the breeder realized that we weren't dog people, he told us that this litter was a mistake and he was dumping them as quickly and quietly as possible. If it got out that his Hooked-to-Duda champion female dog had this litter, she wouldn't be considered a pure breed anymore. What the actual fuck? Anyway, I knew she'd be huge and around little kids. I was a stay-at-home mom and I took dog classes and worked extensively with her for her first 2 years around my 2 boys and my 2 daycare girls. She was very submissive and had never shown an iota of aggression. She weighed 120 pounds. One day, she and I were sitting under the front yard tree. I was reading a book. The kids were playing across the street. My oldest boy, about 12, and another kid, about 14 or 15, were goofing around. I want to add that this was a skater neighborhood. We supported and encouraged it. Our little neighborhood had about 20 houses, all built around a private park. Blue-collar working families. The older kids taught the younger ones. The game they were fooling with that day was how to flip someone. They were having fun. My boy was having the time of his life, enjoying the attention of the older kid. No one was getting hurt. However, all my dog saw was a big kid flipping her boy. One moment my dog was lying under a shade tree at my feet. In the blink of an eye, deadly silent, she shot across the street and got between those 2 boys, all 120 pounds of her. Hackles straight up. Her posture I can't even describe. That dog lived 14 years. She was quiet most of the time. If she barked, you got up because there was a reason. She loved fireworks and lightning. She would demand to be let out to run patrol to protect us from that ruckus. She's been gone for 14 years and I'm bawling writing this. I miss her as much today as the day she died. Story 55. When Opal the cat wants a door to open, she will stretch toward the doorknob. She is too small to reach the doorknob, but she knows that is how doors open. Story 56. One time my parents' puppy slipped through the gate at a relative's house and ran toward the motorway. My dad chased her, but our dog was quicker. She chased the puppy and barked furiously until she rounded her up. It impressed me because she was not a herding dog, just a slightly belligerent schnauzer. When I went to university, the schnauzer would get bored and break out. She would walk through the whole village to visit a friend who did not have a dog and liked to hike. He worried about her and made sure she was worn out before he brought her back. His house was not easy to find, so she was clearly visiting him on purpose. Story 57. When my parrot repeated my breakup rant word for word to my new boyfriend. Story 58. My cat once meowed at us. He is generally quiet. He stood by the back screen door, and we noticed how cute he was. Then he meowed again, this time on the other side of the screen door. The curtain was covering the opening. We thought, oh no, where's the other cat? Sure enough, the other cat was having a heyday out in the neighborhood. The runaway cat stayed away from us until 1 a.m. Then he went right outside our bedroom window and howled until we woke up. That night taught us that they are both really smart. One is just more thoughtful than the other. Story 59. I have an older horse, a gelding, who is incredibly intelligent but very cheeky. I brought my mare home for the holidays and housed her in the same pen as him. At the time my mare was younger and I lunged her often. Lunging involves holding a whip and asking the horse to go around you in a circle on a long lead. The gelding would watch us. One day my mom watched him pick up a stick and stand perpendicular to my mare. He waved the stick by bobbing his head up and down. She did not react, so he tapped her on the hindquarters with it. She put her ears back but began to go around him in a circle. He turned on his haunches to stay facing her and effectively lunged her for several small circles before she seemed to realize she was not tied to anything. She then kicked him in the chest and ran away. He dropped the stick and returned to his own business. Story 60. My dog was lying on the couch, chewing one of his toys. My roommate's dog wanted the toy even though it was not hers, but she knew better than to try to take it from him. He tolerated her and would let her play with his toys when he was not using them, but he had snapped at her more than once when she tried to take something he was playing with. She ran to the front door barking. He dropped the toy and followed, also barking. She ran back in, grabbed the toy, and ran into the laundry room. Story 61. I had a golden retriever pit mix, a pitreaver, named Sasha. I learned how smart she was soon after we got her, when I brought home Taco Bell for dinner. I watched from the corner of my eye as she watched the wrapper where all the taco bits fell while I ate. She nonchalantly edged up to the wrapper, grabbed it when she thought I was not looking, and hid it around the corner. I called her name and she dropped the wrapper and poked her head into the doorway as if to say, yes, what is it? I told her I had seen her take the wrapper and asked her to bring it to me. She huffed, grabbed the wrapper, and brought it to me. I was so shocked I gave her about 5 puppy-approved treats and told her what a good girl she was. She was always doing clever little things like that. When I got a new couch, I told her no dogs were allowed on it anymore. So she climbed into people's laps instead, and then taught her 3-legged sister how to do it too. Obviously, the no dogs on the couch rule did not last long. Puppy cuddles are much better than hair-free couches anyway. She passed away 10 years ago, and I miss that clever girl every day. She was my soul pup. Story 62. On my way to the kitchen to do the dishes, I walked past my Labrador asleep on the couch. I was just finishing up when there was a knock on the front door. The neighbor, out of breath, said, "Your dog just stole one of my chickens." I chased her here. I opened the door so he could see her, still asleep on the couch. Then we heard clucking. There was a chicken in my living room and a giant Labrador-sized hole in my back screen door. But she was innocently sleeping. Story 63. My friend came over with her dog. Our dogs were best friends. We left the house to get some food, and not long after we received a phone call from a neighbor saying the dogs were out. My friend's dog had not been left at my house alone before, so my dog opened the sliding door for her. This was a three-step process. He pulled a wooden rod from the door track, unlocked the sliding door, and opened it. He had done this before at our old house when we had a yard. He could also unlock the deadbolt if he trusted you. My dog seemed almost feral when we got him. He did not understand a water bowl or doors, and we had not taught him any of this. He was a good boy. Story 64. My rescue Labrador taught himself to find and retrieve his naughty brother, a boxer and bloodhound mix, after the brother went missing for 3 hours in January while following his nose. This week, one of my cats went missing. With no training, I let my Labrador smell the towel she sleeps on, told him to go find the cat, and he did. He knew exactly what to do and what we wanted. He is so smart. Story 65. My dog has a set of identical balls. They are different colors, and he switches between them, picking a favorite. He had a bad habit of tossing the balls under the furniture so he could fish them out. One day he did this and could not retrieve the ball. He came to stand in front of me and stared. When he knew I was paying attention, he looked at another ball on the floor and then at the couch where his current favorite was hidden. Then he looked back at me. He had a silent conversation with me. Story 66. I set the oven to clean mode before bed, and it started smoking because it had been 5 years since I cleaned it. One of my cats was meowing in a strange way outside my bedroom door, and I realized he was alerting me to the smoke. I opened several windows and gave him pets and treats for being such a good boy. Story 67. One of our cats can let himself out of the microchip cat flap when it is in lockdown mode. He pushes down the inside electronic catch with one front paw. With his other paw, he gets a claw into the gap between the flap and its surround and lifts the flap up toward him. He then sticks his head through to complete the maneuver. He is entirely self-taught. He just figured it out one day. Story 68. I have 4 parakeets but didn't get them all at the same time. We got the 2 youngest together and introduced them to the 2 older birds. The older ones were not amused. They are all best friends now. When we introduced them, the babies were, of course, very confused and just kind of milling about on the floor because their wings were clipped. Our oldest and smartest watched them from above, occasionally flying down to inspect and then returning to the cage to keep staring. At some point, he became so frustrated that he flew over and landed on the shelf above my desk and started screaming directly at my face. I assumed he was thinking, "Dude, what on earth is this?" The funniest part is that he never lands on my desk. I've tried for years to get him to hang out there and he refuses. But that day he had no other way to express his displeasure. We like to joke that he was complaining to the manager. Story 69. We had a husky, a typical husky. One day she was being mouthy and trying to get my attention. I didn't see what was happening, so I gave her some grief for talking to me. She looked at me like I was dumb, pointed to the Thanksgiving turkey on the counter where the cat was nibbling, and then looked back at me. It was as if she said, "The cat is eating your food. Either make it stop or make it share." I have never lived this down. Story 70. I have always been fascinated by stories about animals that know when people are sick even before they are. I have had many cats over the years. About 6 years ago, I adopted Florence, who is one of those cats. She is very sweet but prefers to sleep at the foot of the bed unless I am getting sick or am sick. I can now predict an illness 100% because she will suddenly decide she needs to sleep as close to my head as possible, on top of the pillow, against my chest, or on my neck if I do not move her, purring like crazy. She keeps cuddling until I feel better. She has predicted every cold, flu, and coronavirus disease 2019 infection I have had since she arrived in my life and refuses to leave my side until I feel well, at which point she goes back to sleeping at the foot of the bed. Story 71. We used to spell the word eat. I would say, I guess it's time for the boys to eat, because we always say let's eat when it's dinner time. Guess who learned to spell? That is not the only word they know how to spell. Go camping and cheese are just a few others. Story 72. I had a very well-trained dog for a while. She died years ago and I miss her. My partner had an old friend staying with us. This woman was awful. condescending, whiny, and miserable. We had not seen her in 20 years, and in that time she had changed into a monster. That said, she was never mean to my dog. I do not know if my dog picked up on the vibe or saw my face, but she pooped on that woman's pillow in the guest room. I was so proud and impressed. Story 73. I had a cat while I was living with a roommate. One day I came home from work and smelled cat urine in the living room. I realized my roommate had shut the bathroom door, locking my cat away from her litter box all day. I resigned myself to a mess, thanked architectural history that the living room had terracotta tile instead of carpet, and started looking for the source of the smell. It was the trash can. When she could not get to her litter box, she urinated in the trash can. Good cat. Story 74. Here I am reading about all these smart dogs, while I spent thousands of dollars at the vet, only to find out my dog is terrified of her own farts. She was screaming in fear. We thought she was dying. Story 75. We had rabbits that lived in a big outdoor enclosure that doubled as a cat run. When we were home, we opened the cat door that led to it. Cats would go out and rabbits would come in. We also had a fat little Staffordshire Bull Terrier whom we named Sandy because she was a sandwich short of a picnic, meaning she was not very smart. After we built the cat and rabbit run, we fell into a nightly routine. We would have dinner, watch the 6 p.m. news, put the rabbits outside. The cats were always in by then, and take Sandy for a walk. Not even a week later, Sandy started rounding up the rabbits as soon as she heard the weather show music in the final segment and herding them out the cat door. A week after that, she had figured out how to shut the cat door so they could not get back in. Story 76. There was a dog who ruled the neighborhood. His name was Bungie because as a puppy he would jump straight up as if on a string. He was allowed off leash and wandered among the houses at the bottom of the street, never going far from home. A few days after my mother died, I went for a walk. Bungie approached me, began to cry, circled me, then stopped and walked back home. Story 77. My dogs know how cute they are and use that to their advantage when meeting new people. I've caught on, and whenever they manipulate an unsuspecting person, they give me a little side eye that says, "Still got it." Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.